When we think of Alexander the Great, we see a brilliant military mind who single-handedly conquered most of the known world, all before he was 33. But the deeper you look into his life, the stranger it gets. Did he have a secret lineage? How did he die? And where is he now? Here are 5 mysteries surrounding Alexander the Great. Number 5. The Oracle of Siwa's Prophecy. If you ever watch Game of Thrones, you'll be familiar with the oracles that pop up from time to time in that series. They're never clear, they're often cryptic, and they always seem to cause trouble. Well, there was an oracle in real life who may have set Alexander on his path to greatness, but no one knows for sure if she was a true seer or a liar. The year is 336 BC, and Alexander is hanging out in the Egyptian city of Siwa. He has come to consult the famous Oracle of Siwa, also known as the Oracle of Amun, who has a reputation for being able to predict the future. According to accounts written down hundreds of years after the fact, the oracle told Alexander that he was the son of Zeus, king of the gods in Greek mythology. If this is true, it would make him the son of a god. Now, Alexander had previously believed that his father was King Philip II of Macedon. So naturally, he was pretty surprised by this news. We can't know for sure whether or not there was any truth to these claims, because the only records we have of them were written long after the fact by people who clearly wanted to portray Alexander as a kind of chosen one. It might have been that this was a total fabrication cooked up by those around Alexander to boost his ego and help legitimize his rule over Egypt. What we do know is that the Oracle of Siwa was usually consulted about political matters and rarely, if ever, had anything to do with predicting parentage. In fact, this whole episode could have been a miscommunication. We don't know what language the oracle spoke, but since she was associated with the Egyptian god Amun, it's likely that she primarily spoke Egyptian rather than Greek. Most accounts state that she spoke to Alexander through a priest, but some say that he understood her words directly. There's also the possibility that her words were misinterpreted on purpose to flatter Alexander. In the end, we don't know if she really spoke of his divine heritage, if he misunderstood her words, or if the whole thing was made up. But whatever the truth was, Alexander took the prophecy to heart, and it profoundly affected his actions going forward. Soon after receiving his supposed divine revelation, he changed his name from Alexander to Alexander the Great. He started worshiping the Egyptian gods and built a new temple for Amun in his honor. He even declared that his tomb would be in Alexandria, which is exactly where his tomb ended up being. Coincidence? Number 4. The untouched body that refused to decay. When Alexander the Great died, his body was put on display for all to see. You know, just your typical day in the life of an ancient conqueror. This is what happened. Alexander's empire stretched from Greece to India, but he didn't live to enjoy it all. He died in 323 BC at the age of 32 or 33. No one knows for sure, because even though he was born in Pella, the capital of the Kingdom of Macedon, the date of his birth is unknown. But we do know how he died. Well, we think we do. Basically, while we have lots of details about the circumstances surrounding his death, nobody knows for sure what actually killed him. According to the accounts we have, he got sick during a banquet, possibly with malaria, and then he died 10 days later. Some sources say that he was drunk when he was taken ill, others that he was poisoned. However, we have no way of knowing which version is correct. After he passed away, his body was embalmed according to Egyptian customs and displayed in his tomb. But even though the process of mummification was meant to preserve his body, it didn't work very well. One source says that after he was put on display, he began to stink so badly that they had to remove him from public view. Now, given that mummies were supposed to be preserved, this is super strange. One theory to explain this oddity is that Alexander's body simply wasn't properly embalmed, but another possibility is that the entire account of his mummification is false and his body decayed normally. Either way, the fact that his body decayed despite being embalmed doesn't bode well for the rest of the story. While Alexander was laid to rest deep inside a tomb in Alexandria, his body wasn't left alone for long. Over the centuries, grave robbers looted his tomb. And since his bones weren't preserved, they probably assumed that his mummy must be somewhere nearby. The exact location of his tomb was lost to history, and the grave robbers may have thought they were doing their job correctly by digging up his remains and leaving his empty sarcophagus behind. No. 3. The disappearance of his tomb. Alexander the Great's tomb was once considered one of the ancient world's most important archaeological sites. But today, no one has any idea where it is. As we discussed earlier, Alexander's body was embalmed according to Egyptian traditions, placed in a coffin, and then put inside a stone sarcophagus. Then he was buried in a huge tomb near the city of Alexandria in Egypt. For centuries, his tomb was revered, but no one knew exactly where it was. Excavations began in the 19th century, but it wasn't until 2001 that archaeologists found the possible site of his burial chamber. It's located underneath a mosque, which is sitting right next to a library that was constructed atop Alexander's tomb. And researchers are still excavating the area. But that's not all. The strangest part of the story is that while the site of his tomb is relatively well known, his actual tomb isn't. See, between 2001 and 2003, 3 shafts were discovered that led to underground burial chambers. These chambers are huge and intricately decorated with beautiful artwork and carvings. They even have false doors to trick grave robbers. One of the chambers even contained coffins, but none of the coffins or the sarcophagus were Alexander's. To this day, archaeologists haven't found his remains or his tomb. So if his tomb is hiding somewhere beneath the mosque, researchers will have to delicately excavate the site without damaging it. 2. The burning of Persepolis. Today we're going to talk about the burning of Persepolis, which was the capital of the Achaemenid Empire from 550 BC to 330 BC. This city was originally founded by the Sumerians, but it was largely abandoned when the Persians showed up in the 6th century BC. Then Cyrus the Great made it the new capital of his growing empire. It became the ceremonial capital of the empire, and it was home to many of the greatest monuments of the ancient Persian world. It was also where Alexander the Great went a little crazy. In 330 BC, Alexander arrived at Persepolis with his army. His goal was to capture the imperial treasury, and he was prepared to burn the city to the ground if necessary. But he didn't expect the level of destruction that ultimately occurred. As the story goes, Alexander decided to light a massive bonfire in the royal palace, and his soldiers got a little too enthusiastic. The fire spread quickly, and before anyone could stop it, the entire complex was a fiery inferno. Many valuable artifacts were destroyed, including the famous burnt tablets of Persepolis, which were clay tablets used to record financial transactions. Alexander reportedly saw what was happening and tried to get his soldiers to put the fire out, but it was too late. By the time the flames were extinguished, much of Persepolis was gone. But was this tale of destruction entirely accurate? Well, evidence suggests that it wasn't. Archaeologists believe that much of the damage at Persepolis may have already been done before Alexander arrived. It looks like the city was severely damaged by an earthquake sometime before he sacked the city. Also, according to historians, the city was largely abandoned by the time Alexander came through, so he didn't have to destroy it to defeat its inhabitants. Instead, it was probably already destroyed and he just made things worse. 1. The mysterious circumstances of his death. Alexander the Great died young. Like we mentioned earlier, he passed away at either 32 or 33 years old. No one knows for sure because the exact date of his birth is lost to history, but we do know that he died in Babylon in 323 BC. And again, we think we do. According to the sources we have, Alexander fell sick one night during a banquet, possibly because he drank too much or because he ate something he shouldn't have. The next day, he seemed better, but he died 10 days later on June. His symptoms supposedly included fever, vomiting, and abdominal pain. Some historians suggest that he was poisoned by his wife, Roxana, but others argue against it. A lot of historians also believe that he died from malaria, but recent studies have challenged this idea. In 2022, scientists published a paper claiming that Alexander's symptoms were actually consistent with dengue fever. They based their argument on the writings of the Greek physician Cyrannus of Ephesus, who claimed that Alexander experienced chills, high fever, headache, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Since these symptoms are common in both dengue fever and malaria, people who support the malaria hypothesis aren't convinced. Alexander was exposed to malaria multiple times throughout his life, but he only died once, so perhaps his death was caused by something else entirely. Now you need to watch what really killed Cleopatra. Last Pharaoh of Egypt, or here are 10 incredible facts about ancient Egypt. Part 2.